Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. Today, we will start a new chapter that is executive. This chapter deals with the composition, powers, and functions of the executive, and also the growing power, the growing role which is played by the executive in the governance of the country. All these things will be discussed under this chapter. So, we will start the chapter with meaning of executive. What do we mean by executive? Actually, you are knowing this that there are three organs of the government. This is legislature, executive, and judiciary. And all the three organs of the government has been assigned three different types of function. The function of legislature is to enact the laws. The function of executive is to implement those laws, and the function of judiciary is to punish people who are not following the laws of the laws, who are not following the laws which are made by the legislature and which are implemented by the executive. So, this is the broad classification of function among the three organs of the government. Now we are concerned with the executive. So, first of all, you must know that there are two parts in executive. The one part of the executive is concerned only with the implementation of the laws of the legislature, and this part of the executive is known as administration. You must have heard this word administration. Administration, you may heard many things people say that administration is not doing its work. It's it's working in a very uh, ineffective manner. So what is administration? Administration is that part of executive which is concerned, which is to implement the laws of the parliament. Side by side, it is also responsible for the implementation of the policies. So, the policies are the major policies of the countries are are formulated by the executive. So, the other part of the executive is that part which is the decision maker, which takes major decisions regarding the uh, national politics, which takes major decisions regarding the policies of the government. And that part of executive is consists of president or prime minister with council of ministers. So, in this way, we can say that the executive is that part of the government which primarily looks after the function of implementation and administration. It is underlined here, you can see the organ of the government that primarily looks after the function of implementation and administration is called the executive. And it is executive is the branch of government which is responsible for the implementation of laws and policies adopted by the legislature. The executive is often involved in framing of policy. Okay, so executive is responsible for the implementation of laws, and it is also responsible for framing of policies. The executive is the decision makers. Okay, so in this way we can say that the executive has two parts. The first part, which deals with the administration, is called the permanent executive. Permanent executive means that executive which is there for always. Our civil servants, our bureaucrats, they constitute this permanent executive. They are responsible for the administration, and the second part, which is involved in framing of policy, that function is done by political executive. And this political executive is not permanent. Why it is not permanent? Because who are the political executive? The president, the prime minister, the council of ministers. These are the political executive. And how they get their post? Through elections. So their post is not permanent. They are elected only for a fixed duration, after which they again face the election, and they may lose their post very easily if they are not able to get the vote of the people, isn't it? So we can see there are two parts in executive, and the one part is permanent and the another part is political. Okay, so these underlined sentences are important for you. Now I'm proceeding further. What we find that there are different types of executive. In some countries, president is the head of the executive. In some countries, prime minister is the head of the executive. In some countries, monarch is the head of the executive. So they are known by different names in different countries, and they also have different type function. Nature of power and function also changes from country to country. We can see that in USA there is presidential system. Under this presidential system, what happens that the president is the most powerful. Okay, and then we see Canada. Canada has a parliamentary democracy with a constitutional monarch where Queen Elizabeth II is the formal chief of state, and prime minister is the head of the government. So Canada has parliamentary democracy. Then we come to France. France has semi presidential system. Semi presidential, I'm telling you, first you see the how there are different types of executive is existing in different countries. Then I will explain you the meaning of all these types of executive. Okay, so in Japan there is a parliamentary system, and emperor is the head of the state and prime minister is the head of the government. Now Italy has also a parliamentary system where president is the formal head and prime minister is the head of the government. And in Russia, there is semi-presidential system, under which president is the head of the state and prime minister is the head of the government. Germany has also a parliamentary system, and under this system, president is the ceremonial head. Okay, and chancellor is the real head. So in all these discussion, what we see that in different countries different types of executive is existing. One thing is always coming that the head of the state and head of the government. So first of all, in order to understand the term executive, you must understand the meaning of head of the state and head of the government. Actually, head of the state means the ceremonial head, the nominal head, the person who the person under whose authority all the functions are done. Whatever functions are done by the executive, who puts the signature? The nominal head or the head of the state. He or she is the head of the state. It means that all the powers of the executive are used in the name of the head of the state. He or she may not be using these powers actually. Actually, these powers are used by someone else. But what is happening that all the functions are done in the name of the real head of the in the name of the uh, head of the state, the nominal head of the executive. In our country, we are experiencing this. Whatever decision is taken by the executive, that decision, there is a stamp of the President of India, there is signature of the President of India on that decision. So it means that that decision is taken by the President. No, the decision has been taken by the Prime Minister with his Council of Ministers. The President is there only to put his signature. So this is nominal head. Naam matra ka pradhan. He is not having any real powers. He has only nominal powers. He is ceremonial head. He is called head of the state. Formally, he is the head of the state. Okay. Now the second term is head of the government. What do we mean by head of the government? Head of the government means the real head of the executive. The that part of executive or that head of executive which actually exercising the power. All the decisions are actually taken by the real head, though he or she is not putting his signature. His stamp is also not there. But the decisions are taken by the real head. They are the actual head of the government. They are the real power users. So they are called head of the government, head of the state and head of the government. Head of the state is nominal head, ceremonial head. Head of the government is real head, actual head. So this differentiation should be completely clear in your mind. Otherwise, there will be problem in understanding the content of the chapter. Okay. So in presidential system, what we find that the president is both. He is the head of the state also and he is the head of the government also. All the powers are actually exercised by the president and the powers are exercised in his name also. So he is all in all. He is the ceremonial head also and he is the real head also. This type of system is adopted in America and many countries like Brazil and countries of Latin America, this system has been adopted. Okay. Now there is another system, that is a parliamentary system. Under this parliamentary system, what we find is that there are two heads. Two heads are there. One is real head and the another is nominal or ceremonial head. Now, who is the ceremonial head? Ceremonial head is that who is actually not powerful. Actually, he or she is not exercising his or her powers. Now, this ceremonial head also is two types. You can see here ceremonial executive. That is the head of the state. Okay, this is head of the state. This head of the state can be of two types. Constitutional monarchy and parliamentary republic. In constitutional monarchy, what happens? The the head of the state is monarch. Okay, who is because of heredity, he is the constitutional. He is the head of the state. Okay. So in the constitutional monarchy, the monarch is the head of the state. The example is Britain. In Britain, we find that the head of the state is the king or the queen. So this is the condition. Now the second type of ceremonial executive is parliamentary republic. In this, what we find that the president is there. Okay, president is the head of the state, and this is called republic. What do you mean by republic? Republic is um, that form of government in which head of the state is elected. He or she should be elected, and that election can be directly, can be indirectly also. If we consider the case of India, we see that in India the president is not directly elected by the people, but he is indirectly elected by the people. So we have parliamentary republic, under which the president is the head of the state. Okay, so he is the ceremonial head. All the functions are done in the name of the ceremonial head. And there is one more head, that is head of the government. You can see here is head of the government. Who is considered, who is head of the government? He is prime minister. Okay, all the functions, all the powers are actually exercised by the prime minister with his council of ministers. Okay, so the most important feature of parliamentary system is that there are two heads. One is head of the state, the another is head of the government. Okay, now the second thing, which is also very much important, the second thing is that the head of the state and the head of the government, that is prime minister, he is the leader of the majority party in legislature. Legislature, which is the representative body. The members of legislatures are elected by the people. So prime minister is the leader of the majority party in legislature, and it is important for all, it is compulsory for all the ministers to be a member of any house of the parliament. Okay, and these will be discussed in detail uh, in the later part of the chapter. Here I am just giving you a understanding, an understanding of the types of executive. So two things are there: head of the government, head of the state. They are different people, and the prime minister is the leader of the majority party in legislature. He is accountable to the legislature. He, whatever work is done by the prime minister, he cannot do anything. Whatever he does, he has to give answer in the parliament, and that is why it is called answerable form of government. It is accountable form of government, because the executive is not something that can use power arbitrarily, but whatever it does, it has to give answer to the representatives of the people. So this is parliamentary system. Okay, and under presidential system, I have told you that the same person is head of the state as well as head of the government. And mostly it is the in every country, under the presidential system, the president is elected directly by the people. Okay, and he is not accountable to the legislature. This is very important difference between these two systems of executive. In parliamentary system, the prime minister is accountable to the legislature, but in presidential system, the president is not accountable to the legislature. And in this system, there is fear of president may start misusing his power. There is a type of fear exists there. Now there is another form of government, that is semi-presidential system. In this system, we see that president is the head of the state, and prime minister is also there, who is considered as head of the government. Okay. Now Prime Minister and President, for both of them, there is the process of election, and Prime Minister is appointed by the President, but President appoints only that person as Prime Minister who is the leader of the majority party in the legislature. And one more thing, that it is same as parliamentary system, because the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers are responsible to legislature. So in this semi-presidential system, there are some features of the parliamentary system and some features of the presidential system. Okay, so these are the main types of executive. Now we will consider this semi-presidential executive in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has adopted this semi-presidential system, and for this purpose, there was an amendment of the Constitution of Sri Lanka in 1978, and the system of executive presidency was introduced there. This system Under this system, people elect the president directly. Okay, and there is election for prime minister also, and there may be such situation arose in which both the president and the prime minister belong to the same political party, or it's not necessary, they may belong to different political parties also, but both of them are elected by the people. The president is directly elected, and the election of prime minister is not is not election for the post of prime minister. But as happens in our country, that the general election, it happens for the people, the members of the parliament, members of the Lok Sabha, and then in Lok Sabha, whichever party holds the majority of the seats, that party chooses its leader as prime minister. So, in the same way, the president election of the prime minister happens in Sri Lanka also, and there is election of the president also there. Under the constitution, president has very important powers. He chooses the prime minister. Okay, though he cannot choose any person, he has to choose from the party that has majority in the parliament. Okay, and we see that the president has the power to remove the prime minister or ministers, because in the semi-presidential executive, what we see, the important features of this executive is that the prime minister is responsible to the legislature. There is variation in every country in adopting the different types of executive. In Sri Lanka, the president has the power to remove the prime minister or ministers. Okay, so prime president has vast powers. He is head of the state. He is head of the government, and he is also the chief of armed forces, commander in chief of the armed forces. So the term of the president is 6 years, and he can be removed only by a resolution. If a resolution is presented in the parliament, and uh, that resolution is about removal of the president. Okay, and the resolution to remove the president is presented in the parliament, and if it passes by two-thirds of the total membership of parliament, then what happens, that the president will be removed. But there is one more situation. Suppose if the resolution to remove the president has not passed by two-third majority, but it is passed by more than half of the membership, then in that case there is a special power given to speaker by the constitution. The speaker of the house has the power to, he can report this matter to the Supreme Court if he feels he is satisfied that whatever allegation has been put against the president, that allegation is should be inquired. There must be an inquiry in the allegation which has been put against the president. If the speaker thinks like that, then he can report the matter to the Supreme Court. So, in this way, what we find that in all the types of system of executive, there is a fear that the executive should not use its power in an abusive manner. It should not uh, misuse its power, and in order to control that misuse of power by the head of the state or and head of the government, what is done that there is various types of checks are adopted. For example, in parliamentary system, the prime minister is collectively responsible to the legislature, and in this system, which we seeing in uh, Sri Lanka, there we find that the judiciary has a role in the removal of the president. So, why this system was adopted? The system was adopted so that the president should not use its power in an arbitrary manner. There must be some fear in the mind of the president that he can be removed, and if the his resolution is not passed by the parliament, even though it can there can be inquiry by the Supreme Court. So these are the provisions to control the powers of the executive. The executive should not misuse its power. In order to achieve that aim, these types of checks have been adopted in different countries in different various ways. So this is all about different types of uh, executive. Okay, in different countries, different type of executive has been adopted. Okay. Most parliamentary systems have a president or a monarch who is the nominal head of the state, and president or monarch is only ceremonial head. They have no real powers. Prime minister, along with the cabinet, uses the effective powers. Countries with such system include Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom, as well as Portugal. So you must remember, because these are the examples of the countries which have a parliamentary form of government. Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom, and Portugal. A semi-presidential system, we have discussed all these things. Okay. Countries with such a system include France, Russia, Sri Lanka. Okay. So these are the examples of a semi-presidential system. And earlier we saw in US and in most of the Latin American countries, this system has been the system of presidential form of government have been adopted. Now we will discuss this executive in context of India only, and all the aspects of executive will be discussed in detail. The first important thing is why India adopted the parliamentary executive. What was the reason behind it? And after discussing this, we will discuss powers and position of president, then powers and position of prime ministers, council of ministers. Okay, all these things will be discussed in the next class. And for today, this is your class has been completed.